Hello, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural videocast on TIDES, brought to you by Yenzasri. TIDES is all about magnifying and amplifying voices of trailblazers in the industry, sparking innovative conversations, and driving forward-thinking solutions. Today's topic is navigating the AI tsunami, the impacts on workforce and HR's role in guiding organizations. I'm Shveta Malhan, and I'm excited to be your host today. Now, let me introduce our phenomenal panelists today. First up, we have Leah Eggen, a powerhouse in change management with over 2 decades of experience across dynamic industries like oil and gas, telecommunications, engineering, and technology. She's a guru in organizational effectiveness, talent management, executive coaching, and more. Plus, Leah channels her passion for sharing her knowledge and wisdom as a facilitator at Mount Royal University, teaching organizational effectiveness. Leah's knack of steering complex change initiatives and her innovative strategies make her a leading voice in this space. Leah, we're thrilled to have you with us. And joining Leah is Deanna Pathak, an absolute rock star in people and organizational strategy with over 20 years of experience. She's a senior vice president at Klick, where she leads groundbreaking talent management strategies. With a stellar background in HR strategy, leadership development, workforce planning, Deanna knows how to drive organizational success. Her previous roles at Accenture and United Health Group, combined with her MBA in human resources, make her a go-to expert in talent transformation. Deanna, we are excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Today, our goal is to explore how AI-driven transformation differs from past changes, the need for innovative approaches to managing change, the strategic role of HR in this transformation, and how leveraging people data can support organizational transformation. So before we dive in, I wanted to thank both of you for joining me in this discussion today. Having worked closely with you both, I know this is going to be a deeply passionate conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's get started with you, Leah. AI is the hottest topic of the day, and everyone is talking about it. The scope and scale of this change seems way too big. From your perspective and decades of experience in the change and transformation world, how is AI-driven transformation different from any other major changes we've seen in recent history?
Well, so in my opinion, the title of this, the tsunami, sorry, I can't say the word, is really good. It's a good reference because we all know, we've been talking about this for decades, how quickly change is happening. Well, AI is even making that faster at a very, very rapid pace. Organizations, as you have said, I've worked in many different industries and different organizations doing transformations, technology implementations, supporting from the change side. And some of them are doing them well, but most of them are not. And so now we're going to have even more of a rapid change. And I don't think organizations are set up for it. I was recently at a session with Mercer where they were sharing their top trends in HR. And AI, of course, came up on that. And, they're saying that CEOs are expecting that it's going to change work greatly. Well, that's fabulous to say. I think we're all in agreement on that. But how are organizations going to adopt this? What are organizations going to do? There are 3 things that I see that is really different with this. First is the scope. This isn't going to hit 1 or 2 departments. This truly is going to transform the organization. It's going to hit many areas, process, technology, and a huge part will be people. In many of the changes I've implemented in the past, it had little aspects on all of them, but not to the size that this will be. So I think scope is going to be a huge factor. I've talked about the pace of change and then how we work. Now, we've implemented different technologies, and sure, it's changed our work a little bit, but this is greatly going to change how we work. We're going to have to look at org design. We're going to have to look at how roles are structured, how we interact across departments. This is why HR's role in this is going to be critical. I've worked on many projects where HR didn't even have a role. In my opinion, with this, HR has to be at the table right from the beginning. So that's really the kind of three key areas that I think is different with this versus other changes that we've done in the past.
Fascinating. I'm happy to hear that you're elevating the people dimension of this transformation. So Deanna, you've been in the talent space for such a long time. What do you think from your perspective? Do you think HR is ready? And why is it crucial for HR to act as that strategic partner in AI integration that Leah is alluding to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if HR is ready. I don't know if anyone's ready, actually. Mm-hmm. I think that, as Leah alluded to, there's so much change that's going to happen so very quickly. And the interesting thing about AI is that, yes, we know where AI is right now, but as AI continues to teach itself, it will continue to get smarter faster. So while we might be measuring the timelines by what AI can do right now, in 6 months, those timelines will have to adjust again based on the fact that it will continue to speed up the change. So I think that HR is crucial in all of this for organizations. I think it's important that people in HR remain curious and educated around just AI tools, the movement of AI, the future of AI. I think that that's going to be really important for HR professionals to just remain curious about what's happening in the market. I also think that as these transformations start to happen, and we've all been through these big transformations with organizations, it creates a sense of fear amongst employees. And it's really important, I think, that HR acts as that, gets kind of in front of that fear to say, there isn't anything to fear in this, but there is a lot to learn. And there is a lot of transformation that's going to happen and a lot of change. And I think even that change is going to speed up faster than what HR people are used to. And so we can't use our old methods of change that take 6 months to get the organization there. Everything is going to have to speed up. But I think if we not only partner with the business on the business goals and the objectives of all of this, but partner across industries with other HR professionals, that we remain curious in the tools, that we ourselves are using the tools to help us create change plans and do all of the things that we typically do. One of the things I find really interesting in all of this is I am sort of talking to different people in HR across different industries, is that people keep saying, yes, I'm really fascinated. This is really interesting. And I use ChatGPT all the time. And that's really great. And I don't want to downplay the importance of that. There's so many other tools that have come into play, even just for an HR team, that are going to transform our own teams. And so I think being a partner to the business, making sure that we remain curious, taking advantage of the AI tools for our own processes, to make sure that we are also participating in the AI change and transforming our teams and their skills and everything that's going to go along with this huge AI transformation.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that you bring up a very interesting perspective on readiness of the HR function itself when it comes to supporting the rest of the organization. So Leah, would you like to weigh in from your perspective how you see HR's readiness in this support or strategic support role for the rest of the organization?
Yeah, those that I've talked to, and it's only within my limited area of contacts, many of them aren't even thinking of it. So they're going about their business. It's something that they're hearing about on the news, but they're thinking more robots and, how it's impacting the music industry, because that's recently with songs and stuff, but they're not thinking about how it will impact them, but also how their role will be different to support the organization. I brought up that Mercer conference, or it wasn't a conference, it was a session that I went to. Something really interesting out of their work was, in the past, HR would often go to market to find the skills. The skills aren't there right now. Some are, but they're not there. So now we're needing to look to grow or to develop those skills internally. And so that means training now comes to be really important again. Training, I've been in the field for a long time. We've seen it go like this over the years, but those skills are going to be extremely important. And if we can't go to market to get them, then how are we going to grow them internally and develop? And that is something I don't think HR is thinking of or prepared for. And it's going to be really important in order to also start adopting, because this isn't just about putting in a tool and learning to use it. This is about changing how we're working in order to use the tool to augment what we're doing. And that's a real difference with this. So I 100% agree with Deanna. I don't think HR or organizations aren't ready, and I don't think many HR departments are.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think there's also a little bit of split between the types of organizations as well when it comes to thinking about AI and being ready for this adoption. I was at an HRO event recently, and there were about 150 people that I was engaged with, and AI didn't seem to be the prime focus for them from an HR perspective, and sometimes there's so much noise in our ecosystem as well that people who are not coming from technology first mindset, they're like, oh, what's the difference between AI, AGI, ASI? What's happening now here? So it's too much happening at the same time for everybody to be kind of, as a HR capability, working in the right direction, lockstep together. Because I think companies that are natively digitally savvy, the HR function in those companies would be thinking and operating differently versus organizations that probably aren't very tech savvy and they're still on the early stages of traditional digital transformation. So they'll have a harder time to wrap their heads around it. So anyways, this is so interesting. And you talked about skills, Leah. So I would love to hear both your perspectives on HR as a capability and the skill set in HR. Like, what can HR people be thinking or doing differently to lift their own capability to support the rest of the organization? Because some organizations don't have change management as a capability built into the HR function either.
No, it's interesting because in my role as a change person, I've often spent a lot of it in the IT department or the technology department. I come from an HR background, so I've been between HR and IT, but it's interesting because it depends on how the organization is dealing with change management right now. So they're going to need to look at that in order to set up to help support the organization with this as this is implemented. Yeah, Deanna, did you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, again, I like Leah said, I think it's really interesting. I don't think that a lot of organizations do change well now. So that is going to be a speed bump for people. The great thing about AI, though, is that you can go and learn all about change management, and you can actually train GPTs on your organization, how your organization typically handles change, who are those change detractors, all of that stuff you can put into a GPT for the GPT to then act as your organization. And then as you put your change plan together, the AI will help you do that much quicker than we've ever been able to do. I mean, I worked in change a long time ago, but I always found, the plans were tedious to come up with, and then getting people to follow them. It's a lot. And I think we just don't have time. We don't have time to do all of that. And we don't have enough people who are highly skilled in change management in organizations. And I think, as people started to go different ways in HR, I think change was one of those things that sort of got forgotten by people, unfortunately, because we need it really badly right now. I think one of the things that will help HR and organizations through this is for HR to remember that in order to have a successful change management, and especially with AI, is to really have a culture around innovation and to foster that within the organization. And I think if we can start there, if we can start with innovation being a part and a big part of our culture, and teach our employees to teach themselves and to learn and to grow, I think we'll start to see people naturally sort of leaning in to these technologies as they learn how to use them. I also think that HR needs to do the same thing that we're going to be doing with all of our departments in terms of change management. We need to do with ourselves. And I think that sometimes gets missed by HR departments. And that will be hugely important in all of this.
Yeah, I 100% agree. One of the things in change management that we do not do well, and at least every project I've been on has been a struggle, is the leadership support and the leadership understanding their role in driving the change. And to exactly what Deanna was saying, this is going to happen really rapidly. We can't create these long plans and spend all this time with analysis and creating all these tactics. We have to be a little bit more flexible. But if you want to have any of that culture that Deanna was talking about, it starts with leadership. And so getting them supportive of this before they invest in it, create a strategy around it, spend some time piloting in certain areas, learn, understand what they want for a return on investment. All will be very important before we start jumping into this. Because we're going to anticipate quite a bit of resistance. If we don't do this well, we're going to even scare people even more. So that we have to slow down a little in the beginning, in the sense of put that strategy together. What areas of the company are we going to pilot it in? Where are we going to see the first hits? How will HR help look at this holistically within the organization, meaning impacts to different roles? What are the system integrations that are going to be required? And then what do we expect for efficiencies? If we don't define all of those things up front, we're going to put in some tools. They're going to use it a little bit for maybe, checking a communication, and we're not going to be using them to their fullest. And we're going to have many of the problems we've had before. And the other area that HR and other departments have to come together on are things like ethics, security, data. Now, data, you know what? It kills me, because we've been talking about data for years, the quality of data. I mean, that's been a number one hurdle in many projects I've been on. We put in tools and the data isn't there. So the tool can't really work to its fullest capability. This is no different. The AI has amazing functionality, but if we don't have good data, we're going to have all kinds of challenges. And so that's another thing that needs to be looked at from that business readiness point of view. And I think HR, again, can play a really key role in this, but HR needs to understand all of these elements before they can. And they can also be those change champions. They need to understand how to use the tools so that they can then support their leaders, because the leaders are going to be so important in helping drive these changes.
Yeah. I mean, two things that you spoke about resonate very closely, and I'm sure whoever's watching us will be also curious to know about the difference between leadership support in previous digital transformation efforts versus today. I think inherently, given how AI is impacting, the scale of AI impact on businesses, we might already have leaders' attention and eyes. But to your point, Leah, there might still be a challenge around how do we actually incorporate their attention into getting more traction with the user community? How do we bring leaders focus? Like, leaders have to be active participants in this technology transformation, in my opinion, like how they're using technology, what were their wins, what were their struggles. If their experiences are amplified in the organization, I think that will diffuse the anxiety and fear that's associated with this particular change. Because, I mean, there's enough out there to help people understand that ultimately their jobs are going to be impacted. In what ways, we don't know yet. Could be their jobs that they're doing today would be done differently. Could be scope of their job goes down. Could be their roles are totally gone and they have to pivot into new positions and roles in the organization. So I think being active and present leader in this transformation might be a way in which HR can support the rest of the organization by partnering closely with the leaders and amplifying their voice.
Well, and you said a couple of things there. First thing is the org design or work design is going to greatly change. And we have to look at that piece of it before we start looking at, implementing it. Leaders right now, at least on my experience, the biggest area we're having the gap is them leading the change. And so when I see a study saying 97% of senior leaders say AI will transform their business, yeah, but how many of those, it's easy to say it, but how many of those leaders then really support what needs to happen in order for it to be adopted, to use it to its fullest ability, which is to gain efficiencies, right? And I think that's going to be the huge gap, because leaders, many of us, we're all learning. We're all figuring this out. They don't know much more than we do, but in order to lead, they're going to need to quickly get up to speed on what it can provide for the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Leah. I recently had a conversation with a very senior person in one of the big four consulting firms. And their whole job right now is based on selling to their clients different AI technology. And as I was talking to this person, I said, so how are you using AI in your daily life, your work life? How have you adopted it? And I was shocked when this person said, I don't use it at all. And I thought, whoa, I mean, how are you selling something to clients that you haven't bought into at all? And I think that is really going to be a gap here, because I think, yes, leaders are talking about it. They are recognizing that there are efficiencies that can be earned from using these platforms. But I think we also need to meet leaders where they are in their own journey. Because if you are trying to champion something to your organization and you yourself are not using those things, or you are not curious about them and you are not engaging, that only goes so far. And I think that is where the breakdown will come. And I mean, again, I was shocked, but as I then took that and started talking to other people, it really seemed to be the norm. They didn't know how to use it. They felt like they could tell other people how to use it, but they themselves had no idea. And so I think HR can play a crucial role in this, and really having those open conversations with our leaders about not just how it will affect the entire organization, but how are you today engaging with these platforms and learning about this? And I think the more that we can lead them to the tools and have them work with that, I think what will naturally happen is that they will begin to champion those things.
Because it can be very exciting. And yes, it's that attitude change, but they have to play with it and then see where it can benefit within the organization. And right away, I think a lot of people just think, oh, it's going to eliminate jobs. In some cases it will, but I think right away it will not. We have to start small and then kind of work our way up. And starting small is, what areas will we get the most impact? What tasks can we augment with AI? And then we will get to a point where we can start to go, okay, maybe we can look to eliminate this role, but other roles will be created as a result, right? And this is why I was saying about that org design piece, because we can't, I have said we need to start with pilots to test this out, to see those benefits, get people on board, get them excited. So that's going to be really important, but we have to then look holistically at all the impacts this is going to have within the organization. And one area is not going to be enough for the cost benefits. You're going to need to look at it more holistically.
You talk about org design, Leah, and I'd love us to double click on org design aspect of it. Are you sensing, and this is a question to both of you, from your perspectives, are you sensing that when we think about org design, it might mean completely rewiring the organization with new capability, new structures? It's not just about shrinking and making the organization hierarchically flat, but also spinning up new capabilities that might not exist today.
Well, that's exactly it, right? And that's why it has to be done holistically. And I love Deanna's perspective on this, but my experience has been companies don't do it well. If they do it, they bring in the big four to help them, consulting companies to help them. This is going to happen too quickly. We can't go to all, because they can only have so much capacity. And no offense to them, really. They're learning as well. So they're not that much further ahead than we are. So, but we do need to then look at this. And this isn't right away because, again, we want to pilot, is my opinion. But then we need to go, okay, what are the outputs of this pilot? We need to look at this holistically. What else do we need to kind of redesign here? Because if we do this in little pieces, we're going to have we're going to have all the problems we have today. Silos, people not properly collaborating. And then again, we're not getting the full usage out of the tool, right? Deanna?
Yeah, I mean, I do think there, going back to what you said, Shveta, I do think there is fear, right? And I think that depending on how organizations handle this and how HR handles this, we could create more fear. However, if we look back, and it's too bad that I'm old enough to remember this, but if we look back and remember when the internet hit and really became a normal thing that people were going to Google and searching and doing all of these things, there was a lot of fear then that jobs would go away. And the truth is, they did. But we don't have less jobs today than we did then. In fact, we have more jobs because what happened is the skills needed to do things changed. Jobs changed. What we needed in organizations changed because now we had this machine that could do all of these things, but we still needed human beings to do the other things. And I think this is not the same because this will happen at a much more rapid pace. But I think if we can just remember that piece and bring that to our leaders as this is going to change the organization. There may be some jobs that are no longer needed, or there may be some jobs in which there are efficiencies to which now 35% of my job is done through AI. So there are other ways in which I can contribute. And I think it's important that we identify what those efficiencies will be, how much of each job will be affected. And then if that part of your job is gone, what else can you do? How can you then contribute? Because I think we need to look at this as more of something that is powering us forward versus something that is going to take away from people. And I think it's all in the way we frame this to our leaders. And yes, there will definitely need to be some different org designs. There will be new roles created. I saw something the other day that said that, my kids are in grade 3, and it said 80% of the jobs that will be created by the time your kids are of job age are not anything anyone has ever thought of yet. So it's not even in our mind of what those jobs could be. So I think, yes, there's going to be a lot of change. I think that we could do a lot to bring the fear levels down in how we communicate about these things and how we speak about these things. And instead of talking about job elimination or reorg or, org design, because all of those words really scare people when you don't have the context behind it. I think we need to talk about how we can then reskill our people to do more and contribute in different ways. And I think that can make it very exciting for them.
Yeah, and what you're highlighting, Deanna, is, again, I'm circling back to, Leah, what you brought up earlier was the data side of this whole equation. Because we are getting into the world where we'll have to make decisions and choices, not from an elimination perspective and point of view, but even rewiring the organization, reskilling our people, replotting them in the new organizational structures, which are all positive effects or positive things that we have to do with this change. And Deanna, I know that you lead a people data and analytics capability. What's your perspective on how data is like can be leveraged as a superpower to help HR people make more informed choices and decisions in partnership with their business leaders?
Yeah, I think data is going to be extremely important in all of this. And maybe I'm a little biased because I do lead the people analytics team. However, I think their role is only going to increase. And I think the first thing that we can all, look at in the future that is going to need to happen is we are going to have to get more serious about doing skill gap analysis. We are going to have to look at, even if we don't know 24 months from now what the skills are going to be in the marketplace, we're going to have to start looking 6 months, 12 months out. Maybe that time frame is even shorter depending on how fast this change happens. But we need to utilize the AI tools that are available to us now to help us do that skill gap analysis. Whereas before, that could take an individual a very long time to process. Now, we've been testing that in a matter of minutes. We can have a skill gap analysis done for the entirety of the organization. And then it's looking at what are the transferable skills that your organization already has. And so where can we make those connections around it will be easiest to, with someone with this skill, to upskill or reskill to this. And all of that can be done through our AI tools. It really is very interesting how quickly it can feed you a report. And then with human intervention, you can make sure that those things align to what your organization is trying to do. I think personalizing learning and development plans is something that will come from this. Once we understand the skill gap analysis, once we understand what people want to do, that's an important part of this too. This can't be done in a back room somewhere. We have to interact with people and say, what would you like to learn? What is your career path now with these changes? What does that look like for you? And then really personalizing that to each person and providing that training and those learning and development opportunities for people. I think another big piece of this that is going to happen is I think talent acquisition is going to be greatly affected. I lead a talent acquisition team. I'm very passionate about talent acquisition. I believe in human-to-human contact and talent acquisition. I think it's very important. I also believe that there are parts of what our talent acquisition teams do that can be automated through a data process of sourcing, for example, going through tons of resumes and being able, again, to teach the AI or the GPT what good looks like, and then allow that to go out and do the sourcing for you. So I think there's a lot of things through data that we can do. I mean, that's just like the tip of the iceberg. I think once we get through, it's very exciting, actually. If you think about, I think people data and analytics is sort of a new thing for HR. It's not something even that some HR departments have or invest in. And now it's sort of coming to the top of like, this is going to be the engine behind powering all of this forward.
Well, and to add to that, Deanna, I mean, HR has been talking for as long as I've been in HR about being a strategic business partner and being less administrative. And this is really going to be that cusp to change that role because we could do the administrative stuff much quicker, as you pointed out with your examples. And then we can help focus and be that partner with the business. The other area I'm seeing it coming up in is employee engagement surveys. And then using AI to really, based on an answer, tailor the next question. And then the analysis is much quicker as well. So that is another area which has been painful, is an area that we're going to see, or at least I see a real good use for.
And Leah, to your point, as we collect the human behavior data, how do you see it with the change strategies that organizations can scale up, personalize, and tailor to the needs of the organization?
Well, this again is why HR is critical in this, because, change has worked as a piece, often working with HR, but this is really going to need to be integrated, because we can't also not only create big, long change plans, but we can't create big, long training and plans as either. This isn't going to work as well. So as Deanna had said, it's not even looking years out, it's looking months out. So this is going to happen. And this means a change in thinking in all of us, right? In how we work, how we approach work. And so, yeah, that's how I see it happening.
Fantastic. AI is such a evolving space, and we are like, every time you blink, I feel from my perspective, there's something new that we have to catch up and learn about. But it's such a fascinating space, and we can continue to talk about it for hours at length. But I think for today, I will pause our conversation here, because both of you have shared some amazing insights. And I thank you both for that, especially the real life examples and use cases that you brought to the conversation were very, very helpful. So I think we should definitely think about doing a part 2 to this conversation, where we can do a deep dive into the use cases. But before I wrap us up, any parting thoughts or insights or takeaways that you want to leave people who would be listening to this podcast?
I think for me, it's just remain curious, because I think that's such a big skill that might be lacking for people. I think sometimes the fear can take over our curiosity, but I think for HR people to remain curious and remember that we can create an innovative culture where we then are not doing all the work ourselves, but are bringing employees and our leaders to the table so that we're collectively doing the work. And when people get to be involved in the work, it's much easier for them to buy in. So I think the biggest thing is just remain curious.
Yeah, I think that's well said, Deanna. And I would just, emphasize, don't wait for stuff to come to you. You need, and that's part of being curious, but you need to go out and do some research and get interested, right? Otherwise, you're going to be left behind.
Very quickly.
Well said, both of you. So thank you both, and thank you all for joining us today. Let's continue to embrace change, leverage AI strategically, and drive forward-looking, innovative approaches in our organizations, like both Deanna and Leah are also reinforcing for us all. And thank you, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me.